Happy New Year, everyone, and welcome back to the Balancing Act podcast. Happy 2026. I'm Andy Temte. On the Balancing Act, we talk to business leaders and industry experts to explore the balancing acts we play in our professional lives and learn about the events that put rocket boosters behind their career success. Today, we have Jeff Meade joining us. Jeff is the founding director of Entrepreneurship at Paul Quinn College in Dallas. With over 20 years of experience growing companies and advising businesses, his work has been featured in Harvard Business Review, Fast Company, and Entrepreneur Magazine. Welcome to the show, Jeff.
Thank you. Thank you for having me. It's great to be here.
Yeah, so we're going to shine a bright light on the great work that Paul Quinn College is doing. But before we do that, please give our listeners the elevator pitch version of your story.
Yeah, absolutely. Thanks. So I like to tell people, and I've finally gotten comfortable with the term, but I'm a serial entrepreneur. And so I have started a bunch of businesses. That's been my life since I graduated from college. My first business, when we first started, I called it a consulting firm. But soon the marketplace said, nope, we don't believe two 21-year-olds can actually do any consulting. So we pivoted. We learned the word pivot really quick, and we turned it into a market research company. And we were focused on young people our age. And I like to tell people at the time, we just created a better mousetrap, right? Research companies back then, they were doing focus groups. It was surveys. And what we did was we said, hey, we're talking to 20-year-olds. Let's go to their house. Let's go to the clubs. Let's go to the playgrounds. It was just every place that people were at, we were there. And so it just kind of took off like a rocket ship. Thankfully. And so we had some major clients, Levi's, the jeans. They were one of our big clients at first, and Timberland Boot Company out of New Hampshire, another big client. But I say all that to say that it just really took off, and we grew by leaps and bounds. And, we actually had two offers to buy the company. And as my students like to say, we fumbled the bag, right? Like we really messed up those opportunities. And it was really because we just didn't know enough, and our egos got in the way.
Yeah.
And so at that time I said, we just don't know enough about business. And so I applied to business school, went to business school for 2 years, got my MBA, came out and joined a small company that was 3 people at the time. And we grew that company to about 35 folks, which was fantastic. And took that experience and said, I want to do this again. And started another company, which was working with a client in Philadelphia. It was a sneaker company, and I had no idea there was a bunch of money in sneakers. And so they made me an offer, and they said, hey, we'd love you to come on board and run our marketing. And what's funny about those guys is it was a mom and pop shop for the longest time. At the time, they were around for about 23 years, and they had about 50 doors, right? And so in the retail world, that's 50 stores.
Yep.
And over the next 2 years with this venture capital money that they got pumped in, we increased the number of doors to 120, right?
Wow.
So big culture shift. So that's my career. It's been about, really just growth, this kind of serial entrepreneur. And the funny thing is the reason that we're in Dallas now is because when we went to Philly, my wife had got an amazing opportunity, and we decided to, I said, hey, we came to Philly, thanks. And then we moved to Dallas, and I kicked around here and I started talking to some small agencies, and, I was helping them grow. And I said, I might have something here, and started a consulting firm working with small agencies. And part of me, one struggle that I had is I just said, there aren't a lot of agencies owners who look like me. Mm-hmm. And so I wanted to figure out how to get more minority entrepreneurs going and starting businesses. And so I kind of shopped the idea around. Somebody introduced me to Michael Sorrell, who's the president of Paul Quinn. Yep. And I said, I had this idea. I want to help more minority entrepreneurs start agencies. And he said, I want to just help create more minority entrepreneurs. And I was like, that's the vision. It's a lot bigger vision. And so we teamed up. We teamed up in November 2024. So I haven't been at Paul Quinn that long, but we teamed up, and I'm now launching the Every Quinnite's an Entrepreneur program. So
We're going to talk
that's
about
my career in a nutshell.
That's awesome. We're going to talk about every Quinnite is an entrepreneur in just a bit. A small plug for Michael Sorrell. He was honored at the Kaplan Educational Foundation Gala back in 2019, I believe it was, and I was in attendance. Very impressed by what he was doing at Paul Quinn College. So we're going to shine a bright light on Paul Quinn today. Before we get there, if you had one event in your life that just put rocket boosters under your career, what would that be?
Yeah, I think my idea is kind of mine's is a bit non-traditional, right? Like I always, now I point to this event that happened about 2 years ago. And I was hiking in Mount Takao, which is about an hour west of Tokyo, with my best friend. And when we get together, we ask these really big life questions. My wife always jokes like, it's no fun to hang out with you guys. You talk for hours and hours about life questions. And he asked me a simple question. We're about an hour into the hike, and he said, what makes you happy? And I was kind of taken aback, like, oh, that's easy. I started talking about my business at the time, and he's like, all right, that's just making more money. It's like, that doesn't make you happy, And then I started talking about my kids, my wife, and it's like, I get it. You love your wife, you love your kids, but what makes you happy? And I couldn't answer it. I struggled, and we hiked for about 4 more hours, couldn't answer it. Took the flight back from Tokyo to Dallas, still couldn't answer it. And I started journaling, and really it was, I said, man, I remember when I was an adjunct professor at UCLA. I really loved that. And the reason I didn't pursue it anymore was I was like, I can't raise a family on this salary, right? As an adjunct.
Adjunct and financial security do not go together.
No, they don't. So that's definitely, that moment there changed my life. I kind of said, what if I put money to the side? What would I want to do? And that led me to start thinking about creating this program and even having conversations. And I think having those conversations led me to the introduction to the folks at Paul Quinn. So that was definitely a big moment for me.
Awesome. It's amazing how the smallest questions that we think are the easiest to answer leave us dumbfounded sometimes and lead to those breakthrough moments. Jeff, let's get to Paul Quinn College. Tell us about the college and what makes the school unique overall in the landscape of higher education.
Yeah. So Paul Quinn, I'd say our secret sauce is that we are a work college. And for the listeners that don't know, Paul Quinn is an HBCU located in Dallas, Texas. We're the only HBCU in Dallas. But our secret sauce is that we're a federal work college, and there are about 8 colleges in this college work consortium. And essentially what that means is we know students are working, right? Like the stats are out there. I think it's like 70% of college students work. So if we just take that as fact, why don't we just create experiences where students can actually learn on the job, right? Instead of working at the gas stations, overnight at the 7-Eleven. No shots at those guys, but we wanted to create opportunities where students can learn. And so that's what Paul Quinn is all about. So we have a corporate work program where we have our upperclassmen work at our corporate partners. So folks like Southwest Airlines, Bank of America. So they're working at companies in and around the Dallas area. But what we realized was students can't just go take those jobs. And so the campus is designed for them to get work experiences. And so they'll work in like enrollment management. They'll work with me in the entrepreneurship office. They'll work all across the campus. And the whole point of it is for them to get life skills and really just make sure that they're work ready, right? And so everybody that comes to Paul Quinn, you are going to work. You're going to work at a corporate partner your junior, senior year. And if you do it right, you will get an offer, right? And so that's what's uniquely different about Paul Quinn.
Yeah, I just love this. I'm all about work readiness, workforce development. And when I first heard the story about Paul Quinn's College's focus, it really, really rang true. So thank you for all that you're doing and Paul Quinn is doing to elevate work readiness. So let's dive into entrepreneurship specifically. Why is that topic so relevant for all learners and not just business students?
Mm-hmm. You know, one interesting thing at Paul Quinn is we focus on the mindset, right? And I think when people hear entrepreneurship, they think of the outcomes. There is, what kind of company are you going to create? And that stuff comes, but for us, it's really about what mindset are we creating, right? And so the whole goal is we're developing students who can identify problems, come up with solutions to those problems, and then build a plan that can actually solve these problems, right, in the future, right? And so that learning and that mindset we think is key for anybody, not just a business major, but for anyone. And truly, when I think about your last question, one inspiration for the entrepreneurship program was the marketplace told us this is what they wanted. They said, the students you're sending us and the people that we're looking to hire, we want them to be more entrepreneurial. We want people who are creative. We want people who can think on their feet. We want people who take ownership of the projects that they're given, right? We just want more entrepreneurial focused folks. And so that was really the inspiration behind the entrepreneurship program. And so that's why we think everyone should have this, because the marketplace is looking for this as a skill. The way we give students the skill is we actually have them work on building a venture, but it really is about shifting their mindset to think like an entrepreneur in any situation that they're in.
Yeah, that's great. And even within a large corporation, this entrepreneurship, the word that I hear a lot is intrapreneurship, but it is this whole mindset thing. I think a lot of people get caught in this trap that entrepreneurship is all about going out and creating a small business opportunity, and that's all cool, but the same skills, the same mindset applies. So before we cut to a quick break, this program, Every Quinnite is an Entrepreneur, I think I'm getting a sense for what that means, but how does the average student at Paul Quinn experience that?
Yeah, right. That title is like an indication of what happens, but we make sure that every student who comes in, and we just started with our freshman class. So our freshmen come in for a summer bridge program, which means they show up a few weeks earlier than everybody else, right? And so one of the first people they see is me, and I put them in a class where they are learning how to come up with ideas that solve problems that they've experienced firsthand or that they've seen in their community. And so we don't just say, come up with an idea. We actually say, what are some problems that need solving? And so we build it like that. So every single freshman is in a class with me, and this is how we start their academic journey. Then after summer bridge, they are then put in a year-long course with me, fall semester and spring semester. And the whole point of that is so that we can start pressure testing some of these ideas they came with. And what is happening now, we've just started, but we're putting students together that have similar ideas. And then some ideas that the group is voting saying, all right, that doesn't make sense. That's a good idea, but it's not a business opportunity. So we see a lot of that happening. And so as we're coming close to ending this semester, what's going to happen as we come to the spring is that we're going to start investing in some of those ideas. So that's going to be really exciting, because we're going to start putting our money where our mouth is and really invest in these ideas for our students.
Right. Oh, that is so cool. Jeff, we're going to take a really short break, and we'll be right back and continue this concept on this conversation on entrepreneurship. Want to understand money, markets, and the economy to make better financial decisions? I'm Andy Temte. Join me every Saturday morning for Money Lessons with Andrew Temte on YouTube or your favorite podcast streaming service. And And we're back with Jeff Meade talking about entrepreneurship. So, Jeff, you just told me you got out of a faculty meeting before the show. Now I'm going to transport you to a higher ed conference. So pick whatever higher ed conference you can think of. You're on a panel. You're up on the stage. I'm the moderator. And I ask the question, why should higher education institutions act like startups or risk irrelevance?
Mm-hmm. So let's see. I would say what I really love about this question is when we start looking at what's happening in the marketplace, right? Like anybody in higher ed knows that we're facing a demographic cliff, right? We just don't have the number of students that we used to have, right? And I think that once you accept that, you have to start answering different questions, or at least asking different questions. And I think the big one would be, if we were to launch our school today, if we were starting out today, what would be different about our institution? And I think that's what a startup would do. But I don't think higher ed would do that, because there are so many legacy costs that you can't even entertain those questions. But the truth is, you will start to become irrelevant if you don't entertain those questions. And so that's what I like about what we're doing, right? A couple years ago, and this precedes me getting there, the school asked the same question. What if we were starting today? What would we do differently? And one of the big ones was, we wouldn't have students graduate with like $70,000, $80,000 of debt, right? Like, that's just crazy. How can you bring that down?
Right.
Right. And so part of what we did was, and this was part of the work program too, right? Let's lower the cost to operate the school. And so that's what our students are doing. Instead of the whole campus being run by professionals, we have some professionals, but we also have students working in those positions. So that lowers the costs, right? And so then we can deliver the education at a lower cost, so we don't have students graduating with all this debt. And so another story that you may have heard at the event with Michael Sorrell is, Boston Consulting Group came in and said to us, you guys are going to run out of cash if you don't do something drastically. And what we did was, they told us, you're probably going to need to cut your football program. Now, like I said, we're in Texas.
Non-starter.
Yes. You don't cut a football program in Texas.
Right.
But the writing was on the wall, right? It was truly like, what would you do differently if you started today? And that was something we had to do. And we've since ended the football program, turned it into a farm, and we grow crops. And actually this past Thanksgiving, some of the food that was grown from our farm was served at Cowboy Stadium for Thanksgiving. So it's really changed. But again, what I love about that question is we continue to ask ourselves those questions, and we pivot and we make those hard choices. And I just don't think higher ed in general is comfortable doing that, because you have these big legacy costs that people are like, well, you can't get rid of this, you can't get rid of that. But the marketplace is saying, you got to choose something, right? Yeah. Because we're not going to have the same amount of customers as we've had in the past.
Right. So, Jeff, this is the time of the show for Mentorship Moment. You've got those same audience members at that conference, and they're curious and they want to learn from your experience. Other than BCG coming in and telling you got to cut the football program, what's the most important piece of advice that you can give to audience members to improve outcomes at their school?
Yeah, I would say, let me first be transparent. I've been at Paul Quinn for a year now, right? And so we're just starting up. So our outcomes are starting to look like how many businesses are being started. And I'm also trying to be a little different by saying how many businesses have started and failed, right? Because I just want to see students trying. And so everything that I'm doing is based on this venture-based learning framework. And it's really simple. It's not only do our students study entrepreneurship, but they do it, right? And so that's the framework that guides everything. And so I think in terms of improving outcomes, my advice would be you just have to put students in these situations where they're actually moving past theory and actually doing the things we say we want them to do. And that's what I love about this, because before I got into higher ed, there was so much conversation about, is a degree worth it? Of course it is. But sometimes we don't give students the right experiences so that when they leave college, they're prepared for the actual workplace. And I think if we can really start thinking about what are the true experiences that they need, that they can kind of, increase their strength, get enough reps with us. And if they fail softly so that they are ready for the workplace. I think that's the sort of experience we want to give our students. So if you can think in terms of what can I do to create these sort of outcomes where students get real life experiences, we call it venture-based learning because everything is wrapped up in creating a venture. That's the real stuff for us. But I think it's really about experiential learning, right? Yeah. Making sure students have real experiences.
Yeah, I was waiting for the academic speak to come out, experiential learning opportunities. But right. I really like your reframing and this new phrase, venture, using the word venture there instead of what's kind of cold and dry and misunderstood experiential learning opportunities.
Right.
A much more direct connection to a venture that is being explored, analyzed, and ultimately run by and with students. That is really, really cool, Jeff.
Right. Thanks.
Yeah, so, Jeff, what have we not discussed today about Paul Quinn that we should have?
We touched on it a little, but I definitely, what I love is that we have a seed fund. And so when we started out, we said, oh, these students are going to create amazing ideas. And I stepped back and I said, well, I think they are, but who's going to support it? We need resources. And so I just went out and fundraised and we created a $100,000 seed fund. And so we have money that we can invest in students' ideas. And so we don't have to go out. What I was seeing is students would come up with ideas and schools would send their students to different pitch competitions. My feelings on pitch competitions are, they could be good, but I question the learning because people are it's like gearing somebody for the tests, right? Yeah. Like you just, and there's so many people who are really good at pitches that don't follow through on the business.
Right.
So I didn't want to set my students up for that. And so I said, we're going to invest in our own. We're going to build out the curriculum and we'll see what ideas actually stick and make sense. And we're going to invest in those ideas. So our seed fund has been amazing for us. And in the spring semester is when we'll first start dispersing those funds.
Excellent. So if you're ready for our lightning round questions, I think the first question will be a great segue if you're ready.
Yeah, let's do it.
All right. Jeff Meade, you just won a $100 million lotto jackpot, but there's a stipulation that half of your net winnings go to one philanthropic organization or cause. Who do you pick?
Ooh, that's too easy. That's Paul Quinn. That's too easy. And all I'd ask is that they put my name on a building, but definitely Paul Quinn.
Nice. Yeah, I thought that was like a T-ball. Set the ball on the tee for you there.
Yeah.
and probably and that seed fund sounds like something that's really would be really interesting to invest in. So
yes, absolutely.
Thank you for that. Now I give you a really small time machine, and you can send a message to an earlier version of yourself. What's the message, and what previous version of Jeff Meade do you send it to?
Ooh, and so this ties in with in the spring. So we are teaching a personal finance class. I'm actually teaching it. So my message would actually be compound interest will give you financial freedom. Yeah. And I would definitely send that to my 21-year-old self because that guy was so focused on starting a business that any money I made went right back into those businesses. And I wish I would have just put some money to the side and just let it build. But I was so focused on the enterprise that I just, if I could give myself any advice, it'd be like, all right, this is good. You should be focused on this, but maybe, you're not going to be 21 forever.
Right. Yeah. Take advantage of that 40-year time horizon.
Yes.
So yeah, I've got another show called Money Lessons, and it's all about saving, investing, the mindset, decision making, et cetera. And it's now an old tired example, but people still aren't listening. You can take $5 a day and invest it on Robinhood in an S&P 500 ETF, and in 40 years that's going to be $981,000 or something like that.
Yeah,
it's a big
you essentially
number.
Create millionaires.
That's right. With $5 a day.
Yeah.
So, Jeff, we're all works in progress. What are you focused on right now in your personal journey of growth?
Yeah. This one probably actually feeds off of the last question. I would say it's about, I want to have a better understanding of private equity. And the reason is because we did a really good job with the seed fund. But what I noticed, and I did it, was when I came in, I focused on the mindset, but I was also really just focused on startups. And that's not all entrepreneurship's about. And so I want to start having my students look at franchising. I want them to look at business acquisitions. And so a part of what I am doing in years 2 and 3 is I want to actually start investing in businesses in and around Paul Quinn. And so what that means is that we will actually buy businesses. The college will, the entrepreneurship program will. And I want to set up some apprentice type programs where our students are going to be put into these businesses so they can learn how to grow and scale a business. But I'm having initial conversations and realizing that I need to better understand this space, because this is going to significantly change our business model as an institution and as a program. And I just need to bone up a lot in this space. So that's where I'm spending a lot of time, talking to a lot of family offices and private equity firms, and really just trying to better understand the space.
Yeah, it's the whole sector can really be a mystery to a lot of folks. Very, very opaque. So pulling down the curtains a little bit it would be helpful.
Yeah.
Jeff, you've been lovely today. Thank you so much for your contributions to the show. Where can folks get a hold of you and learn more about Paul Quinn College?
Yeah, thanks. The first one is, I'd say go to paulquinn.edu, check out Paul Quinn. And for my program specifically, paulquinn.edu /entrepreneurship. You can read all about our program. You can find me on LinkedIn. It's just Jeff Meade, and Meade is spelled Meade. So I got on LinkedIn early enough that I have my name.
Yeah, me too.
So, yeah. So just Jeff Meade. And then also I'm writing about venture-based learning, and you could find that at jeff-meade.com. So jeff-meade.com. So those are all the places you can find me.
Excellent. Well, thank you again for being on the show today.
Yeah, no, thank you very much. It was my pleasure.
All right. My name is Andy Temte. This is the Balancing Act podcast. You can find us on all the major streaming services as well as out on YouTube. Please like, subscribe, rate, and most importantly, share this public good with your friends, your colleagues, your neighbors, and maybe a family member if you really like them. The show is produced by Nicholas Temte, and we'll see you next time on the Balancing Act.